You ever have one of those conversations with someone that in one way or another just turns into a bit of an argument, and no matter how many good points either of you bring up, you already know, and they already know, that it's, it's not like either of you are gonna change your mind. It's kind of like, Forza or Gran Turismo, PS5 or Xbox, 4-cylinder versus 6-cylinder, or 6 versus 8. And that's exactly what we are gonna be talking about today. What is going on, everyone? Jels from Fitment Industries, and on today's episode of the build sheet, we are gonna be going over some of the pros and some of the cons of some of the different engine platforms that are out there, just for the sake of potentially starting a war in the comment section. Of course, before we go ahead and get into today's video, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. We got a brand new film space. We're gonna be building some sets, setting up some new stuff, and it's gonna be a great time, and you're not gonna wanna miss out on that. And don't forget as well, wheel tire suspension, all available over at fitmentindustries.com. Let's go ahead and get into what you all came here for, and let's talk about the first types of engines that we're gonna cover today. We're gonna start off with a good old 4-cylinder engine. Now, 4-cylinder engines, that we're pretty familiar with. We grew up with them. Engines like the F20, the 4G63, the Subaru's EJ series engines, and they become well-known engines throughout the entire car community. Typically, the 4-cylinder engines are laid out in an inline formation. However, as we know, with the Subaru opposed cylinder engine layout, that isn't always the case. Today, a lot of the 4-cylinder cars that we see coming out are equipped with some kind of turbocharger on them. Even though some are strictly for performance, like Subaru's, Evos, Civic Type Rs, all that sort of good stuff, some of the turbochargers are added to the engines to help strictly with fuel efficiency. It allows the car manufacturer to supply a smaller engine that produces similar power to something with a few extra cylinders would. 4-cylinder engines do offer quite a few pros to them, as they're more fuel efficient, at least when they're stock, but that's no fun. But they are also a lot lighter than some of the other engines, obviously because, well, they're smaller, but also because they utilize alloy blocks. They don't utilize as many components. Typically, they are a lot cheaper to maintain. A smaller engine requires less parts, it's less moving parts. And also because they're smaller, things are easier to get access to when you're working in the engine bay, when usually the entire engine is exposed when you open the hood. We all know that 4-cylinders are capable of putting down some impressive horsepower numbers as well. However, it does take the introduction of forced induction and upgraded internals to usually achieve that. Leading into some of the cons of the 4-cylinder platform, they aren't the most powerful in stock form. And another thing that is pretty typical of 4-cylinder applications is that the good majority of them are going to be front-wheel drive. It's just because that's what they were mostly developed for. And that sometimes can be a little bit of a deal breaker for some people. What's next after a 4-cylinder, you might ask? Well, it would be a 5-cylinder. There are a ton of love for 5-cylinder engines, mostly for the sound that they produce. Made famous by the Audi Quattros in the 1980s, the 5-pot saw a huge success in the World Rally Championship racing, and even though the 5-cylinders never got super popular as far as engine choice goes for a lot of manufacturers, we do still see some in vehicles today, such as the Audi TT RS. So what is a 5-cylinder able to offer that something like a 4-cylinder couldn't? Well, one, obviously, be an extra piston, but their biggest advantage actually lies in the stroke cycle of the engine. In a 4-cylinder engine, the power strokes don't overlap. And what does that mean? That in a 4-cylinder, 4-stroke engine, there's a gap between when one piston completes its power stroke and when another piston begins its power stroke. By adding an extra cylinder and getting rid of this gap, it helps with a smoother operation of the engine overall. Let's add another cylinder to the mix and talk about some 6-cylinder engines. Now, these engines come in a wide variety of configurations, from Porsche's opposing 6-cylinder engines to some of the great, Japanese and European straight 6s, and even V6s and VR6s as well. We all know some of the all-time favorites, like the RB26, the 2JZ, the S50, and so on. All those being a straight 6 engine that produce some pretty fantastic noises. 6-cylinder engines offer quite a unique sound to them, of course, depending on the configuration. Insert VQ trombone noise joke here. But 6-cylinder engines are like the sweet spot when it comes to engines. They are a good balance of power and efficiency, especially when they get a good old turbo or supercharger on them. The engines that we listed above are capable of some really impressive horsepower numbers. You know that. That's why they're so popular. Some cons of the platforms, however, However, straight sixes, aren't the easiest engines to just drop into any old engine bay. There's some long boys. However, swap that over to a V6 and you relieve some of that issue. The other con that comes with that is that they can be a little bit of a pain to work on, especially the straight six engines. It's typically the last cylinder, possibly the last two cylinders, kind of get tucked up away in the engine bay. It can be a little tough to get at. Similar to what we see with four-cylinder engines of today, six cylinders have received some of that same treatment, taking what used to be a V8 platform and dropping a couple pistons and replacing them with some spoolie boys to increase that fuel efficiency. Which brings us into the V8 portion of the video. Now, V8s are the big, loud, bulletproof engines of the car world. V8s offer high displacement. They are reliable as all hell. They can take an absolute beating and still keep ticking. They are literally what makes muscle cars, but they're also found in quite a few European and Japanese cars as well. Usually with a little less displacement, but still a V8 nonetheless. People love their V8 engines, especially when it comes to a good cam, it has some chop to it and all that kind of stuff. One of the reasons that people love V8 so much is that, one, the reliability, yes, but also the fact that they offer a good amount of power straight out of the gate because of the higher displacement. However, nothing is without its cons. The V8s are heavy. They're absolutely massive engines. There's a lot of moving parts in them. There's a lot of things that go into making a V8 what a V8 is. And when things end up, eventually do go wrong, there's a lot of stuff to replace. But what it all comes down to is that some engines are just good for some things and the others just not so much. There really is no master platform when it comes to engines because each type of engine offers its own benefits and, offers its own cons. Some engines are powerful in stock form while others, need a little bit of help and are capable of being built stronger and more powerful than their competitor. But we want to know your thoughts down in the comments below. Are you a sucker for a good old turbo four-cylinder or would you rather have a big old-fashioned V8? Let us know down in the comments below. And of course, check out fitmentindustries.com where we got all sorts of wheels, tires, and suspension. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm Gels from Fitment Industries. We'll see you later. Peace.